Welcome to another edition of Frankly Speaking Sports Interview. It is my honor, pleasure, and thrill to introduce to you the play-by-play and studio host of the Texas Rangers for Fox Sports Southwest. Please welcome in Jared Sandler. Jared, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks.
Good. Hey, Jared, let me ask you, I want to talk about baseball for a couple of minutes, and I know you cover the Rangers, and I know you do a radio show as well and cover different sports, but, last night something came down in Major League Baseball where hopefully, and I say hopefully because I never count my chickens before they hatch, especially when it comes to Major League Baseball, that they are getting closer, hopefully, to an agreement so we can go ahead and start the season already. What's the latest you're hearing?
Well, I think that the commissioner has this easy button that he can essentially press when he realizes, or if it gets to a point where he doesn't think any agreement could be made because of the good faith agreement that was agreed upon in March, in which he can basically enforce a schedule of any number of games so long as the players get 100% of a prorated salary. And so I think for that reason, I'm really confident there's going to be a season. I'm not nearly as confident that there's going to be a season because the two sides agree. I do think it's good that after a few days of inactivity, there's a back and forth. It just doesn't seem like there's any progress. It seems like the offers that each side is presenting to the other is essentially 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's maybe worded a little bit differently. It maybe they're making a concession in this area as opposed to that area on this proposal, but then the counter proposal is a concession now in a different area and an ask in another area. It just typically in negotiations, if I say to you, hey, I want $400, you say, well, I'm only going to pay you $300. Then I go down to $375. If you go, up to $325, whatever, you're gaining ground, and it just doesn't seem like the two sides are gaining ground. And I think honestly, this is a problem that's rooted, back to the most recent CBA, in which the owners, for the first time in a long, long time, got the better of the players, and the players are upset. They feel like the owners fleeced them, but the players have been doing that to the owners for several years, and the players just aren't as powerful in their representation right now as they've been in the past. And the negotiating tactics without Mike Weiner, who has since passed, but was one of the most important figures under Donald Fear's leadership, it seems to be missing, and just the relationship between the two sides isn't healthy. And in contrast to the NBA, where yes, the players and owners have their own agendas, their relationship appears to be more of a partnership, where in Major League Baseball right now, it just appears that the players and owners have a relationship that's founded upon an adversarial nature more than anything else.
Now, Jared, you talked about Robert Manfred earlier, about having the ability to press that button if he chooses so. Now, over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of criticism thrown towards Robert Manfred's way about his inability to lead baseball. And my question to you is, there's been several situations where, he doesn't seem like he's very comfortable making decisions. Give you a couple examples. Houston Astros scandal with not, penalizing any players. Boston Red Sox scandal, same thing, not penalizing any players. Do you think this is a case again where Robert Manfred is afraid to make a decision?
Well, I think that, and I don't know what's gone on with the inner workings of the negotiations, because obviously we just hear it as owners offer this, players offer that. We don't really know who the big players are in these discussions, which owners are the most outspoken and, holding firm on this, and which players are the most outspoken holding firm on that. And, in this sort of a deal, Rob Manfred obviously represents the owners, and I think they're the ones with the most say. My guess is that, and while I don't disagree, I think there have been a lot of questionable decisions made under his leadership, and there's certainly areas in which the game needs to improve. If he were to just press that easy button, the schedule would likely be only around 48 to 50 games because he would only want a schedule that would pay the players a lump sum that the owners would green light. So, as much as we'd love, as long of a season as possible, under a full prorated salary, the owners don't want that. So I think his hesitancy in doing that is simply based on the fact that he doesn't need to right now. There's no reason why he needs to essentially give up on the two sides reaching an agreement, no matter how bleak it might seem, because of the shortened season. He probably has a little more time, whereas if that button would render a 100-game season, then he'd probably be a little more pressed to make a decision. I just think in general, no different than any other argument, if you can come to a compromise as opposed to, walk the other way from one another, stomping your feet, that's a better situation. And with the CBA expiring in 2021, I think that whatever sort of goodwill that can be created between owners and players is going to be helpful towards, that negotiation, which no doubt at this point seems like it's going to be highly contentious. So I don't think in this case, I'll defend him in that I don't think he's scared to make that decision. I just think he's waiting in hopes that the two sides can reach an agreement before he turns to that as a last resort.
Now, we are talking to Jared Sadler. He's the play-by-play and studio host of the Texas Rangers. Jared, let me ask you this. We obviously, and it goes without saying, are in a very difficult time, in our nation's history. We started off the season with obviously COVID-19. And then as we moved on, we had the injustice that was done in Minneapolis and all the protesting. And, people were looking for baseball to come back. They needed baseball. They just needed some type of distraction just to get them 2, 3, 4 hours away from the everyday things that are going in life. Do you think baseball, in the fans' view now, is tarnishing its name with their fan base?
So, I definitely think it hurts in the short term. They're not engendering any sort of goodwill with fans, that's for sure. I mean, if you were to look at it from this kind of prism, is it a positive or negative? Well, it's definitely not a positive. I don't know to what degree it's a negative, but it certainly is a net negative impact. Now, I've heard some people say baseball will never be able to recover. I don't think that's the case. If you think about '94 and the strike, was baseball the same right away? Maybe not, but there were things that happened that brought people back in. The home run boom and the McGuire-Sosa romantic '98 season, the home run chase, that drew people in, and that created a love affair, or recreated that love affair with baseball. And I have no doubt that at some point, if there were to not be a season this year, at some point in subsequent years, an event will happen. Baseball will have to react or reshape their game in a way that creates those opportunities. But I'll tell you that I don't think baseball fans are going to be happy. And frankly, even if there is a season, it can all be forgotten pretty quickly. But, I think with the way, fans have seen mom and dad bicker and argue here, I still think there's going to be some sort of a sour taste in their mouth. But, the other thing that hopefully fans can understand is, when comparing Major League Baseball to the NBA or the NHL, the biggest challenge that Major League Baseball is facing is that they haven't played a single regular season game. And so, the NBA and the NHL and obviously the NFL is in a totally different boat, but the NBA and NHL, they were able to bank revenue for, however many games they played. Whereas Major League Baseball and their owners certainly have not had that same advantage. And so the players are now dealing with the consequences of that. But no baseball, I think, would be a terrible outcome. I think it would definitely impact 2021 and maybe 2022. But hopefully at some point baseball would be able to win the support of the fans. And it's not, Larry, it's not the diehards. The diehards are going to be diehards no matter what. They love baseball. They live for 7 o'clock or whenever first pitch is, every night for 7 months. It's the fans who are just casual fans. You give them opportunity to give up their fan card, so to speak, and you don't want that. And so those are the fans that baseball is going to have to fight to keep or fight to win back over time if there's no season.
Now, Jared, today, and it's really hasn't had a lot of publicity. It's been almost like under the table, but today is the Major League Baseball draft. And as you know, they went from 40 rounds down today to 5 rounds, and then everybody else becomes free agents afterwards. What's your thoughts on the MLB draft? Taking away 35 rounds, and do you see the Texas Rangers going after pitch? I believe they got the number 14th pick.
Yeah, sorry, it broke up for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, my friend. Major League Baseball draft is today. It went from 40 rounds to 35 rounds. I just want to get your thoughts on the elimination of 35 rounds, and also, do you believe the Texas Rangers will go after a pitcher with the 14th pick?
About that, yeah. I'll be honest with you. I haven't the slightest clue what they're going to do with that, and I just think, and I follow the NBA draft and the NFL draft, and I even will follow the NHL draft, and I just think the Major League Baseball draft and the NHL draft are so incredibly tough to predict after maybe the top 3, 4, 5 picks compared to the other two. Not that, even the foremost experts nail the first rounds in the NBA and NFL draft. They typically come a lot closer. And so with the 14th pick, I have no idea. What I do know is the experts who cover this on the baseball side, since I've been in this role, have gotten it wrong every year since 2015, and they got it right in 2015 because the Rangers had the 4th pick, and that's not a shot at them. I mean, these people, whether it's on the Baseball America side, the MLB.com side, the Fangraph side, Baseball Perspective, they do great work, and their assessment analysis is outstanding. There are just so many variables in play as you get deeper and deeper into the first round. What I will say, the top 30 prospects for the Rangers, depending on the publication and the ranking, the Rangers have anywhere from 10 to maybe on the high end, 13 pitchers among that top 30. So that would be a strong case for getting pitchers. But, it's not like the Rangers are flush with, those quote-unquote star potential bats. And as you know, in the first round, there are, plenty of guys who get drafted, whether it's the first pick or the 30th pick, who turn into studs. As a matter of fact, the Rangers' best hitter right now, Joey Gallo, wasn't even taken in the true first round. He was taken in the competitive balance round that sandwiches between the first and second round. So, I think there's a case to be made for both sides. Last year they went college bat, both of the first and second picks. I still wouldn't be surprised if they go that direction. It seems like there are going to be maybe more college players taken in the first round and over the first 5 rounds than typical by estimations, say anywhere from 5 to 10% more because of the circumstances. But I obviously both have value, and there are risks associated with both as well. But I have no idea. I just think that those are the two cases for both. Is the Rangers still need studs at the plate? They're not. Their lineup isn't flush with those guys. Not that these guys drafted will provide immediate help. But I don't even know if you look at the Rangers' best hitters, how many in their system, how many of them you look at it and say, this is going to be our middle-of-the-order, all-star, perennial all-star bats. I think a lot of the guys in their system, their top bats, have good player upside, maybe pretty good player upside, but I don't know how many of them have star upside. And then again, on the pitching side, they're not flush necessarily with the same, with a similar type of options from a ceiling standpoint. And as far as the draft, I think it's unfortunate that, minor league baseball teams at the lowest levels are maybe going away. And I don't know if we'll ever see 40 rounds again. Certainly next year it's going to be a minimum of 20 rounds, so 5 rounds is not going to be a mainstay. But, in some parts it's fascinating. I hate that it's going to, alter the course of some kids' lives. The sad thing is, Larry, there are going to be some guys who end up not signing because after the fifth round, you can't receive a signing bonus of more than $20,000, and they're going to end up going to college, and at least one of those guys is going to get hurt, and they'll never get to say they played professional baseball. And that's really unfortunate because of the circumstances. On the other hand, there is a fascinating element to it because for the first time, Major League Baseball teams are going to be basically recruiting top-end talent on even financial ground. Even in past years, the undrafted free agents, we're not talking about top-end talent. These guys weren't drafted in the top 40 rounds. So, it's a lottery ticket. It's a flyer. It's a project. It's a guy maybe who's never played baseball but, runs like the wind. Those are the guys that maybe you're signing. Whereas now you're signing guys out of the top 5 rounds who you otherwise maybe pay $500,000 to in previous years for a signing bonus. You're talking about top-end talent, and so, I'm interested to see, and I don't know that we'll ever get the full scope of the answer, but what are teams doing to separate themselves? How are they recruiting these players? Is it the opportunity, in the minor league system? Maybe me, Larry, I'd be more inclined to sign with the Rangers because I'm from Dallas and the Double-A affiliate is in Frisco, and I can be closer to home once I get to Double-A. I don't know what's going to be appealing most to each player, and because they're not going to be immediate major league players, there's a lot to consider there, and so that's going to be a really interesting part of this. And on the players' side, the decisions that they make. Are we going to see more junior college? More kids go to junior college so they can re-enter next year and try and make the money they'd otherwise make. Or are we going to see more Division I players? And if we do, what are these Division I programs going to do with the scholarships? Because they only have 11.7. So I just think there are a lot of interesting factors here. But I always like to think of it from the players' side. And like a lot of people, maybe like yourself, Larry, I wanted to be a professional athlete in any sport. And I hate that there are going to be kids who otherwise would have had an opportunity to get drafted, stay in the 7th round, and receive a signing bonus of $250,000. But who aren't going to sign for $20,000 and instead go to college and might not ever get that same opportunity.
We are talking to Jared Sandler. He's the play-by-play and studio host of the Texas Rangers. So let's say the season begins, Jared, and that's what we're all hoping for. The Rangers did get Kluber. They did get a guy that I loved watching playing with the New York Mets and also played some time with the Yankees in Todd Frazier as well. But when the season starts, do you see another tough year for the Texas Rangers?
Well, I guess some of it depends on how many teams are making the playoffs. We've heard upwards of 8 teams per league, which, that would be, way better odds for really any team. I don't think the Rangers are going to be worse than last year, and they were more or less middle of the road. Let's say the season was a traditional season, 162 games, 3 division winners plus 2 wild card teams playing, for a chance to participate in a full series beyond just that 1-game playoff. I think the Rangers stand a good chance because of their starting rotation to be competitive and be in the conversation beyond the trade deadline. Again, under a full season. I don't know that they would be in a position to be big buyers at the trade deadline, with where they'd be in the standings. But, I don't know that they would be selling all their parts either. Ultimately, I think the AL West is so tough because I don't know how good the Astros are going to be and how they're going to handle everything that's gone on. But on paper, they are still supremely talented. I think the Oakland Athletics have the best pitching in the division, and their lineup is not maybe star-studded, but they are really, really tough. And I think those 2 teams are better than anyone else in the division on paper. And then who knows? The Angels and Rangers are kind of inverses of one another. The Angels have a deathly lineup, but no one really knows what the heck they're going to do on the mound. And the Rangers have, what appears to be a really, really good rotation, but there are a lot of questions with their lineup. So, I think the fight for the 3rd best team in the division is an interesting one. And, I don't think it's going to be, a miserably poor season for the Rangers. And if things really click in their rotation, maybe they, surprise a lot of people. But I will tell you that if 8 teams in each league make the playoffs, I fully expect the Rangers to be one of those 8 teams. I do think they're good enough for that. And let's just say it's 6 teams make the playoffs. I think the Rangers will compete tooth and nail to be one of those 6 teams. So, I think there are a lot of questions, obviously, with every team at this time. I think the Rangers' biggest questions are, how good is Joey Gallo and what sort of production will the Rangers get in their lineup from guys like Rougned Odor and Willie Calhoun? And then on the rotation side, I think nominally the Rangers' rotation is outstanding, but I think there's some fair questions to ask, like which Corey Kluber are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy who is a Cy Young candidate, or is age and mileage really starting to get the best of him? Can you get a repeat from Mike Minor and Lance Lynn or something close to it? And is Jordan Lyles' 2019 take away one bad month a fair representation of who he is? And if so, then you've got 4 really good pitchers there, and then that doesn't even include Kyle Gibson, who's an incredibly solid member of the rotation as well.
Now, before I let you leave, Jared, I got to switch over a minute and ask you this question. The NBA starts end of July. Playoffs are going to start. Obviously, the Dallas Mavericks are going to be part of that. How far can the Dallas Mavericks go?
Well, Larry, if they end up matching up with the Los Angeles Clippers, then I don't think they go beyond that. And as of now, that's who they face. Now, with the 8 seeding games, that can change. I don't know how much it can change. Basically, for the Mavericks to move up from the 7th spot, there are a number of ways it can happen. But let's just say they go 6-2 over those 8 games, and that's going to be awfully tough for them to do that. But let's just say they go 6-2. Then they need any of the 3 teams ahead of them, the Rockets, the Thunder, the Jazz. If any of them go 4-4 or worse, then the Mavericks will jump them. But going 6-2 is going to be incredibly tough for them. Now, of course, the Clippers can drop, and maybe they could drop from the 2 to the 3 spot. But to me, the only series that I'd look at and say the Mavericks should be a favorite in this series is against the Utah Jazz, and that's really largely because of 3 things, really. One, Utah won't have the benefit of any sort of home court advantage, which, that's not an easy place to play. 2, with Bojan Bogdanovic out, he's their most efficient scorer and just, quantitatively their second best scorer. That's a huge loss. And, we talked at the beginning, what sort of an impact will this have on baseball fans? I said, it's not going to be positive. I don't know the degree to which it's negative. Well, with the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert stuff, I don't know how much that's going to impact them, but I certainly know that all that turmoil is not positive. It doesn't appear like those guys are best of buddies or anything. So, that's a team I'd like to face, even though the Mavs had success against Denver in the regular season, and even though Denver won't have the benefit of the altitude and the home court, the Pepsi Center, that's a team I'd like to avoid. So, unfortunately, I think for the Mavericks, Larry, they're probably going to play 1 series and that's it. But you never know. And I think it's just exciting to see Luka get a chance to participate in the playoffs. And I think it's also exciting to see more opportunities for Luka and Kristaps Porzingis to play together. Because of injuries to both, they really haven't had a lot of time, relatively speaking, this season to play with one another. And unfortunately, as the pandemic hit, they were really starting to hit their stride over the previous couple weeks. So I think those are the ultimate benefits for the Mavericks, getting the playoff experience, getting back in the playoffs, those 2 playing together, and not just getting in the playoffs, but facing a championship caliber team in all likelihood in the Clippers. But unfortunately, I don't see them winning that series. It would just be great if they could win a game.
But, Jared, doesn't this change the whole dynamic of the NBA playoffs? I know you mentioned there's no home court advantage anymore. Not even for Orlando, because you're not going to have fans, number 1. So that part of the game changes. And number 2, when you go into the playoffs, no matter what sport it is, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, or basketball, it's usually the team going into the playoffs that is playing the best basketball at that time that seems to go the furthest. But in this case, you have no teams that have been playing. So doesn't that open it up a lot more for maybe those teams that were not gelling at the time of the stoppage?
Yeah, that's possible. I don't think the Clippers necessarily fit that category. You know, they've been strategically playing and resting guys, and I think when they've needed to win games, they've done really well for the full roster. But yeah, that's possible. I mean, no matter who they play, whether it's the Clippers or the Nuggets or the Lakers or whomever. Yeah, that if a player or a team is just totally out of whack because of the different circumstances, sure. I definitely think that we're in a position for more upsets than in the past, whether that's in the first round or subsequent rounds, just because of the climate and how irregular this is. But the Mavericks, unfortunately, are also a little beat up. They're going to be without Jalen Brunson, who is, he's not a star, but he's a really important guard off the bench for them. They're without Dwight Powell. So unfortunately, they're not going in at full strength. But yeah, this is more than your typical NBA playoff schedule, and anything can happen type of disposition for sure.
Well, Jared, we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Frankly Speaking Sports. I really enjoyed having you as a guest.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, and look forward to doing it in the future.
All right, be safe, my friend. That was Jared Sandler. He's the play-by-play and studio host of the Texas Rangers at Fox Sports Southwest. Want to remind you, if you want to see any of these interviews, previous or going to in the future, you can not only check our Facebook page at Frankly Speaking Sports, but go to our YouTube channel as well. It's also called Frankly Speaking Sports. Want to thank you very much for joining us on this special presentation of Frankly Speaking Sports interview. Have a great day.